Picture a city of 100,000 people, stone towers taller than the trees, markets, kings, a whole living world. Now picture every single one of them simply walking away. No invasion, no bodies, just silence, and a jungle that closes over everything. This really happened. Around 1200 years ago, the greatest cities in the Americas, built by the Maya, emptied out, one after another, until the rainforest swallowed them whole. For centuries, nobody could explain it. 100,000 victims, and no clear killer. So today, we're going to treat it exactly like that, a crime scene. We'll line up the suspects, war, the land itself, and a silent killer hiding in the sky, and we'll rank them. And by the end, I'll show you what scientists pulled out of the mud at the bottom of a lake that finally cracks the case. Stay with me. The answer is not what most people think. But first, you have to understand what was lost. Forget the idea of primitive people scratching at the jungle. The Maya were one of the most advanced civilizations the world had ever seen. While much of Europe was stumbling through the Dark Ages, the Maya were charting the planets. They built a calendar so precise it tracked the length of the year to within minutes. They could predict eclipses and map the movements of Venus hundreds of years into the future. They were doing real mathematics. They understood the concept of zero centuries before most of the world did. They had a full written language, thousands of symbols, and books made of bark. And their cities? Take Tikal, towering limestone pyramids punching up through the canopy. Grand plazas, reservoirs, palaces, every surface coated in brilliant white plaster that would have blazed in the sun. At its peak, this one city may have held 60 to 100,000 people. This was not a village. This was New York for its day. So how does a place like that just stop? Here's the strangest part. The Maya left us a clock. They were obsessed with time. On giant stone slabs, they carved exact dates, down to the day, for everything that mattered. A king crowned, a battle won, a god honored. For centuries, those dates ticked forward like a heartbeat. Then, around the year 800, in city after city, the carving slows. The dates get further apart. Kings stop raising monuments. And the very last full date we have ever found, anywhere, was carved in the year 909. After that, nothing. The heartbeat just stops. Now, let me be honest with you. This didn't happen in a single night. The hook is a feeling, not a fact. The collapse rolled across the southern lowlands over roughly 100 years, city by city, like streetlights going out one by one. But the result was the same. The greatest cities on the continent went dark. So who did it? Suspect number one, war? For a long time, we pictured the Maya as peaceful stargazers. That was wrong. When we finally cracked their writing, the stones told a brutal story. Rival cities, captured kings, ritual sacrifice. And in the final years, it got worse. Defensive walls went up around cities that had never needed them before. At one site, scientists found a thick black layer of charcoal buried in a lake bed. The fingerprint of a city burned completely to the ground, matching a carved record that simply says, "It burned." So is this our killer? Here's the problem. War was nothing new for the Maya. They had fought each other for over 1,000 years, and the cities always recovered. War can explain why one city fell. It cannot explain why an entire civilization emptied out and never came back. So war has an alibi. It was there, but it didn't act alone. Keep it on the board. Quick thing, if you're enjoying playing detective, tap subscribe, because suspect number 3 is where this gets genuinely chilling. Okay, suspect number 2. Suspect number 2 is darker, because this one, they did to themselves. Think about feeding 100,000 people with no tractors and no trucks. The Maya did it by clearing the rainforest, burning it back season after season to plant corn. And they needed wood for something else, too. All that gorgeous white plaster on their temples, you make it by burning limestone in enormous fires. One estimate suggests it could take around 20 trees worth of fuel to plaster a single building. Now multiply that across 100 cities for centuries. At its height, this civilization may have numbered in the millions, far more mouths than the thin jungle soil could ever feed for long. Slowly, quietly, they ate their own forest. And when the trees go, the soil goes with them. It washes off the hills, and the harvests start to shrink. More people, less food, exhausted land. They were sawing off the branch they were sitting on. A powerful suspect, but, like war, it's a slow killer. A sickness, not a death blow. The land weakened the patient. Something else delivered the final hit. And to find it, scientists had to look up. Suspect number 3 was invisible. It left no charcoal, no walls, no bones. For decades, it was almost impossible to prove. Because suspect number 3 is the weather, specifically drought. And here's the obvious problem. How could anyone possibly know how much it rained 1100 years ago? There were no weather stations, no records. The people who could write are long dead. It sounds unprovable, the perfect crime. For years, that's exactly why drought stayed just a theory, waved away as a guess. But it turns out nature keeps its own records. It writes the weather down, quietly, year after year, in 2 places nobody thought to look: at the bottom of lakes and deep inside caves. And the moment scientists learned to read those records, the case blew wide open. Here's the trick. Drill straight down into the floor of an ancient lake, and you pull up a long tube of mud. And that mud is a calendar. Every year, a thin new layer settles on the bottom, so the deepest layers are the oldest. Read it from the bottom up, like the pages of a book, and you are literally reading the weather century by century. Now here's the beautiful part. In a wet year, rain dilutes the lake. But in a brutally dry year, the water evaporates and leaves behind a pale mineral called gypsum. More gypsum means more drought. And when scientists pulled a core from Lake Shashankanab in Mexico, they found thick, pale bands of it, landing right on the collapse. Then they got even cleverer. By measuring the chemistry locked inside that gypsum, a recent study actually calculated the rainfall and found it had crashed by as much as half. In the worst years, up to 70%. Then a stalagmite from a cave in Belize, growing one rainy season at a time, like tree rings in stone, backed it up. By reading the chemistry of each tiny layer, scientists could pin the rainfall down almost year by year, stretching back more than 1,000 years. And it told the exact same story, decade after decade of failed rains, hitting precisely when the cities went silent. There it was, the smoking gun. So case closed? Drought did it. Well, here's the honest turn, and it's better than a simple answer. Because no single suspect did this. They all did. Picture it like this. The land had already weakened them. Too many people, tired soil, a vanishing forest. War had them bleeding and afraid. And then the rains failed, not for a season, but for decades. That was the blow the patient couldn't survive. But there's one more piece, and it's the part that makes this so human. Remember those god kings? Their entire power rested on one promise, that they, through their rituals and their own blood, could make the rain come. So when the sky dried up and stayed dry, imagine what that did. The kings prayed. Nothing. They bled for the gods. Nothing. Year after year. The people watched their god kings fail at the one thing that mattered most, and they stopped believing. They stopped building the temples. They stopped feeding the palace. And eventually, they did the most rational thing desperate people can do. They picked up their families and walked away to find water. The cities didn't fall to an army. They were abandoned by people who simply lost their faith. And here's the part almost everyone gets wrong. The Maya did not vanish. They never died out. They moved, regrouped, and built new cities to the north that thrived for centuries more. In fact, right now, as you're watching this, there are millions of Maya people alive, speaking Maya languages in Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize. They never left. We just stopped paying attention. So step back and look at the whole picture. The most dazzling civilization in the Americas, the people who mapped the stars and invented zero, wasn't taken down by a sword or a monster. It was undone by something quieter, a changing sky, a worn-out land, and a system too proud and too rigid to bend when the world shifted underneath it. They didn't see it coming until it was too late. And if that gives you a small chill in the year you're watching this, you're not the only one. If you made it all the way here, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is built for. So hit subscribe, and you'll be here for the next one. Because here's the real question to sit with. We cracked this case with mud, patience, and a little bit of genius. So what other unsolvable disappearances are just waiting for the right person to look in the right place? I've already pulled the next case file. It's on your screen right now. Tap it, and I'll see you there.